A very good evening to all of you. How are you all doing? I hope I am visible and audible to all of you. How is the festive spirit? Yes, waiting for your responses in the chat box. That will let me know that I'm visible and audible. All right, so I can see myself on the screen. That means I am visible. Yeah, so I welcome you to this ninth session of editorial comprehension. We've had 8 sessions. We've talked about diverse issues in those 8 sessions, from politics to economics, right? We delved into philosophical questions like, does God exist, right? So we've had a diverse range of topics, and today again, my effort is to bring a very different perspective on what is happening in Israel and Palestine. So I'm sort of bringing again a more global perspective on the issue rather than just delving into the narrow micro conflict that we all see panning out before us right now. Yes? So tell me something. How many of you are aware of the Israel Palestine conflict, the Israel Hamas conflict, and have perhaps read a bit about it or have been following it? And in fact, even right now, just a couple of hours before, the talks regarding ceasefire, as in whether it should be extended or not, were happening. So, how many of you have really been following it? Okay, Pratham says that he has been following it. Great, great. Thank you for confirming, Vaibhav. A very happy Holi in advance to all of you. So, today's what we call Holika Dahan or Choti Holi. I hope some of you are celebrating. Right. Okay, so that's what we will be talking about today. And we will look at it from a Middle East perspective, right? So, a broader uh, geological perspective rather than just looking at it as a narrow issue concerning just one or two countries, right? So, this is the Middle East for your reference. I decided to include a map here so that all of us are has been happening, right? So, let's begin. Our piece today is from a magazine called Foreign Policy, right? It's an American publication. Okay, the editor is has Indian origins, and today's article has also been written by an Indian person, and it takes but again it takes a very international perspective. It's not from the perspective of India as such, right? So that's why the genre today is international geopolitics, how what I would like to call it, geopolitics, the importance of geography or the impact of geography for world politics. Okay, so I have just included an excerpt. The whole article is 1400 plus words, right? So I have included an excerpt which I found to be quite pertinent, and making a very good case for what it is saying, right? So I have included that. Quite analytical, quite incisive. I hope you'll enjoy it. So this is the title, the headline. Okay, the title of the article is, Can a New Middle East Survive the Old? So that means the author is going to talk about some changes that may have happened in the Middle East, and now the Palestine conflict may have impacted them and put them on hold, or again will reshape them, right? We'll see. So this is the excerpt, right, that was written right below this title. To achieve regional progress, Arab leaders need to rethink the importance of resolving the Palestine question once and for all, right? कि उसको resolve करना पड़ेगा अगर हमें regional progress चाहिए. So this has been written by this person named Kabir Taneja, who is a Middle East fellow at this think tank. It's an Indian think tank, Observer Research Foundation, and he has also written a book on the ISIS. Right, so it's important to know whose opinion we are reading before reading it. Okay, so Now, before we launch into it, I'm sure some of you are aware. Those of you who are not, we are launching an R5 batch. In fact, it is live. Okay, so we have launched it. And in this, quant will be taken by Swapnil sir. I will take, KD sir and I will take VRC, and Ravi sir will take LRDI. And as you can see here, the idea is to cover everything which is basic and then take you to the advanced level, right? So 4 classes of QA, 3 classes of LRDI, 3 classes of VRC, right? Okay, so now we'll come to our editorial, right? I've tried to put not more than 2 paragraphs on one slide. I have highlighted some terms which you may find tricky, right? We'll discuss them. First you read it, then we'll discuss it. Start. Read? Have you finished reading this? So it is the kind of piece, 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 where there are not a lot of difficult vocabulary words as such, but yes, you need background knowledge. And if you have that, then it becomes very easy to navigate it, right? So a couple of questions from you. From this first paragraph, what can you infer? How was the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia traditionally? Was it a friendly relationship, or was it a not so friendly, perhaps hostile relationship? What do you infer? Even if, let's say, you do not know, so that's, and so I'm teaching you inference right now, because in our exam again we may not know a lot of things, right? So there inference helps. So even if you did not know this earlier, let's say, when you read this paragraph, you realize that probably the relationships between Israel and Saudi Arabia, they were not so good, right? So that is why I'm saying that, it became the first service to Israel allowed to cross Saudi Arabia's airspace. Okay. And how was this achieved? With the help of deft diplomacy. Some skillful diplomacy was needed to achieve this outcome. And it happened 2 years before the Abraham Accords. Anyone who has an idea what these were? Abraham Accords? Yes. Come on, be participative. Otherwise it won't be fun. मैंने तो चूज करा ना आर्टिकल, तो मुझे तो पता ही है ये सब. Okay. All right. So we'll discuss Abraham Accords, what they were, right? I have info for you on the next slide. And another thing that you should notice while reading this. So from an examination perspective, new Middle East. Okay. So what kind of Middle East is a new Middle East? One anchored, something that is centered around connectivity, wealth, business, and technology instead of ideology, conflict, and confrontation. So again, what we are saying? Paisa, right? So centered around wealth, business. So अब हमने अपने पास differences छोड़ दिया because money matters. Yes. So ये हुआ है आपके इजराइल और सऊदी अरेबिया के साथ, राइट? सो इंस्टेड ऑफ द लीविंग बिहाइंड देयर आइडियोलॉजिकल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स, दे डिसाइडेड टू cooperate with each other. That's what happened. And it echoes the case of EU also. So European countries traditionally, they they had a lot of conflicts, but then when they realized that it was not good for business, it was not good for economy, EU happened, European Union happened. So civilians are returning to decimated, almost annihilated, completely destroyed neighborhoods, decimated, reduced to in a way zero. That's the idea of decimal point hota na, reduced to zero. Decimated neighborhoods amid a tenuous, what kind of an agreement can be called a tenuous agreement? Would it be a strong agreement? So the ceasefire is a very weak, very fragile ceasefire. Okay, and the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria has exacerbated regional tensions. So who is aware of this? The collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. Yes. The collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. What happened there? Any idea? Anything that you would like to share? Okay, so TP, please share with us. So you mentioned sinuous. No, tenuous. Sinuous is something that's very curvy. Tenuous is something that's weak. All right. So basically, Bashar al-Assad Assad's family actually has been ruling Syria for a number of years, right? I forget the exact number of years, but for a lot of years they have been ruling, right? So he was passed down this crown in a way, the presidency in a sort of a hereditary manner, right? Now people were very dissatisfied with this regime because of a lot of high unemployment among youth, terrorism, etc., right? So if around 2011 it was a wave of revolutions in the Arab world where the civilians, they protested against their leaders, demanding more freedom, demanding less corrupt governments, and demanding economic development. So this happened in 2011, right? And the Assad government tried to stifle it like anything, right? It clamped down on it like anything, but it persisted, and it actually resulted in a full-blown, what is called the Syrian civil war. Right, and this civil war had been going on for 13 years. Imagine, until finally the protesters, they managed to topple the Assad regime. Bashar al-Assad flew to Russia, sought asylum there, and now they have an interim president, right? So yes, the Assad regime, and it happened very quickly, in December 2024, it happened very, very quickly. Even the protesters were surprised that it happened so quickly. We didn't expect him to give up so easily. So now the thing is that this has a broader implication for the region, which we will come to. Okay, we will come to this, how it has a broader implication. So this has exacerbated. What is the meaning of exacerbate? Exacerbate. See, if you go by the root word technique, if you go by etymology, acerb means something that is bitter, right? Acidic. Acerbs are acids, right? So exacerbate is when you even worsen a situation, when you make it more bitter. Okay, so this has exacerbated, it has worsened regional tensions. So far so good? Yes, सब जग रहे हैं, कोई भी सोया नहीं है. So it's a very complicated region, the Middle East. In fact, the Arab world, the 22 countries that form the Arab world, quite complex geopolitics, right? It's like Game of Thrones happening there, right? So now let's discuss what these Abraham Accords were. Basically, it was a set of kind of agreements between which nations? They happened between Israel. So Israel signed these this agreement, okay, with UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco, right? So, traditionally, these countries have been pro Palestine. Traditionally, these countries, and in fact, the larger Arab world has been pro Palestine. Reading perhaps a book on this issue would really help you because it will give you a historical context of it. I'll suggest two books towards the end, right? So, yeah, initially they were pro Palestine, but and as we saw that now money rules, right? Now they wanted to have economic ties, they wanted to increase their economic influence, so they wanted to normalize relationships with Israel. So that's why the Abraham Accords were signed. So these three countries, and who mediated it? The US, right? Now, Saudi Arabia has a strong pro Palestine and anti Israel stance. So, officially, it did not participate, officially, it did not, but it kind of covertly started cooperating with Israel. Why do you think that must have happened? Absolutely, TP, I agree. So, why do you think Saudi Arabia cooperated with Israel? Yes, Israel has done that. One is money, yes. Another reason is right here, Iran. Okay. So Iran, despite all the sanctions that US has imposed on it, Iran's economy, because of oil, it does fairly well, oil and weapons. Right. Now Iran's influence is strong in the Middle East, right? And it is a nuclear power. Yeah, Iran is a nuclear power. So Saudi Arabia has a rivalry with Iran, right? दुश्मन. तो बेसिकली क्या है, सऊदी अरेबिया की ईरान से राइवलरी है और इजराइल की भी है. तो अब ये क्या हो गया, दुश्मन का दुश्मन दोस्त बना लो, ये पॉलिसी हुई. इसलिए सऊदी अरेबिया कोऑपरेट कर रहा था इजराइल के साथ. तभी देखो ये जो फ्लाइट उड़ी, राइट, दिस फ्लाइट, इट वाज अलाउड टू क्रॉस सऊदी अरेबियाज एयर स्पेस, राइट. So I hope now this makes sense to you. Okay. And what is the broader Israel-Iran conflict? अब ये क्यों दुश्मन है, right? इनमें क्यों problems हैं? क्योंकि Iran supports Palestine. In fact, it very actively backs Hamas. So it is said that the October 7, 2023 attack by Hamas on Israel, it was backed by Iran, right? So तब तो दुश्मन हो गई. Yeah, it's a nuclear threat also. And there is a lot of proxy warfare that happens in the Middle East. Any idea what we mean by this proxy warfare? Yes, everybody. Through Yemen, through Lebanon, yes. So proxy warfare means when you are not directly fighting, when your country is not directly. See, proxy, you must have heard this term, I'm sure you're in college. Yeah, कि मेरी proxy लगा दियो. That means I am not here, but then you substitute for me. So proxy warfare is when a country does not directly engage in war, but it finances militants, let's say. It finances some forces that fight. So Iran does this extensively. In fact, it has this group called Axis of Resistance. Okay, so Hezbollah is an organization. It's labeled a terrorist organization by many countries. Hamas is also one of them, right? So, and there are others also under this Axis of Resistance, and Iran actively engages in it in different countries. Okay, and अब ईरान करता है तो इसराइल रिस्पॉन्ड भी करता है. सो इट्स ए लॉन्ग स्टैंडिंग कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. ये अभी के कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स नहीं है कोई भी. इसराइल पैलेस्टीन तो डेफिनेटली नहीं, राइट. इट स्टार्टेड लाइक it took a very concrete form in 1947 with the formation of Israel, but it has even older roots, right? और ये आपस में एक दूसरे के ऊपर मिसाइल स्ट्राइक्स वगैरह करते रहते हैं, राइट. 2024 में हुआ था. इफ़ यू रेड अबाउट इट, आई एम श्योर यू वुड नो, राइट. तो हाँ, ये भी 1947 के ही इशू हैं, इसराइल वाला जो कॉन्क्रीट इशू हुआ इसराइल पैलेस्टीन, राइट. सो फार सो गुड. ऐसा तो नहीं लग रहा बहुत इन्फॉर्मेशन ओवरलोड हो रहा है? यस. So this is that kind of an article where the language is not going to be difficult, but there's going to be a lot of background to the issue, right? Okay, then I'm assuming everything is fit and fine, and I'll go to the next slide. Right? अब समझ आ रही है deeper conspiracy? There are some scholars who believe. Yes. Have we read this? Are you with me? So there are some scholars who believe that the attack that happened on Israel on October 7, 2023, after which it retaliated like anything on Palestine, this attack was partly, if not entirely, designed to derail all the economic and diplomatic progress that was being made in the Middle East, especially, for example, Saudi Israel normalization. So the way Saudi Arabia and Israel, they decided to have normal diplomatic ties, even if covertly, right? Even if not explicitly, but covertly. And the success of bigger geo-economic ideas. So some people believe that it was meant to derail this, broader economic progress that was being made, diplomatic progress. So it talks about this corridor, India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. So this would involve the entire Middle East, all the countries. So it's important that they cooperate with each other. And such events, of course, derail this progress. They create instability. Yeah. So now the author is trying to say that, we can't ignore these old issues. We can't ignore this. This is now again central to any cohesive move forward movement. We'll be able to move forward only when we address these issues. Right? Okay. Now read these 2 paragraphs and then I'll ask a question. Read? Okay. So the latest war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, as well as its extension into Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is Lebanon's militia, right? Lebanon's militant force. So Lebanon doesn't officially recognize it as such, but it's a major presence there. So why did it extend first of all into Lebanon, this conflict? Because the ideology of Hamas and Hezbollah is similar. Moreover, Israel बहुत शरीफ नहीं है. It's not like Israel बिल्कुल दूध का धुला है, right? That's not the case. Israel constantly tries to extend its territory to southern Lebanon, right? And then Hezbollah strikes back. So when this happened, first Hamas attacked, and the very next day Hezbollah also attacked Israel. Okay, October 8. So the conflict kind of extended into Lebanon, right? So this has now reoriented. Now, whatever was happening, for instance, there was a normalization of relationships between Saudi Arabia and Israel, even if covertly. Now it has again reoriented the regional policies of the Arab states. Look what has happened. Riyadh, that is Saudi Arabia, Tehran, that is Iran, they have, signed a détente. What is a détente? It's pronounced like this: détente. They have, entered into a détente, a resumption of peace. Okay, basically, when two parties, they haven't had good relationships, they have been in conflict. So a resumption of peace. Basically, resumption means you resume peace. Yeah, resuming peace between two conflicting nations. That's a détente, a truce. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Saudi Arabia, which saw Iran as an enemy, has actually signed a détente with it. And who brokered it? China brokered it. So why is this happening? Because now Saudi Arabia has been very clearly pro-Palestine, right? So when this war broke out, right? So Saudi Arabia said that any progress between me and Israel will happen only when Israel first addresses this Palestine issue. So they instead straight away thought, okay, let me try to end the rivalry that I have with Iran. Of course, you can't end it in a day, but then they sort of entered into a détente. But my question is, why is China brokering it? What is China doing here? And why is China interested in this peace? उसको क्या पड़ी है? Any idea? Or oil. Yes. So it takes oil from both of them, from Saudi Arabia also, from Iran also. And a peace, a coordination between these two countries would mean that it has a continuous, not unlimited, a continuous supply of oil. So that's one reason. Any other thing that you can think of? The immediate reason? Yes, continuous, stable oil supply. Any other? Have you heard of this? BRI, Belt and Road Initiative by China? Of course, yes, it wants to increase its geopolitical clout. वो तो China को लगी रहती है. That's why, the BRI is also partly a result of that only. Right? So, Belt and Road Initiative. Read about this. It's a global infrastructure project of China, because of which it is currently one of the biggest creditors to developing countries. Okay? So, read about what it is and what has been its impact, achievements, criticisms. Read about this. Okay? So China को है अब कि मेरे को तो presence increase करनी है, right? And therefore, this happened. To a rapid disintegration of the Assad family's control of Syria after more than 50 years of iron-fisted rule, right? Of dictatorial rule. So it's like a chain reaction happened. First Israel Hamas, then Israel Hezbollah, then this happened, that there was suddenly a détente between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and then in December 24, Assad's regime collapsed, right? So now again, these events are political events, yeah. So they have again placed the Palestinian cause front and center. They, Middle Eastern countries can't just navigate through it, right? They can't just skirt around it. They have to now address it. They have, long used it as a crisis of convenience. जब मन करा साथ में हो गए, जब मन करा उसके अगेंस्ट हो गए, right? जब इकोनॉमिकली कन्वीनियंट है तो अब्राहम एकॉर्ड साइन कर लिया. But they can no longer do so. Right? Because now the Palestinian self-determination cause has a global audience. Now it has become a global issue. It's no longer just a Middle East issue. Yeah? So the Abraham Accord, signed in 2020 by a cluster of Arab states led by the UAE and Israel, sought to normalize political and diplomatic relations and set out a path toward a new regional order, something we have already discussed. Prosperity, economic progress, developmental integration. In other words, paisa is the mantra today. Right? But now what happens now that Palestinian issue is again front and center? Okay, we'll see that, but first read this. Crisis of convenience means that, they call it a crisis when it suits their political interest. See, Israel-Palestine has been a long-standing issue, but different countries invoke this issue whenever it suits them. So whenever, let's say, I want to say something against Israel, I would say, oh, they are suppressing Palestinian people, right? So I am using it for my political interest. No, just because I, let's say, have something against Israel, I'll invoke this issue. So this then becomes a crisis of convenience for me. Okay? Right. Let's see this. Red. अब तक तो हो जाना चाहिए था रीड. So this is a continuation of what we just said, that that prosperity, economic progress, developmental integration. In other words, money is the mantra today. So what we see happening is regional powers such as the UAE, which has a lot of power, right? It's a hub of economic activity, especially of the Middle East. UAE and Saudi Arabia are hedging their bets. What would this sentence mean? It's a very good sentence to frame a question on in the exam. Regional powers such as the UAE and Saudi Arabia are hedging their bets on allies and pursuing strategic autonomy. To hedge your bets on allies means that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're putting them in different baskets. So it's not like you are relying a lot on just one country. Okay, you are exploring your relationships with multiple countries. So they are hedging their bets on allies and pursuing very strategic autonomy, right? That they act as part of the group when it is convenient. They act alone as a sovereign nation individually when it is strategic for them, when it makes sense for them. So this has been given, now an example has been given to us. In addition to close ties with the US, they are expanding. So UAE and Saudi Arabia, they are pro-Western nations, okay, pro-West, pro-US, whereas Iran is anti-US, anti-West, right? So in addition to close ties with the US, तो भाई हमने US से भी बना के रखी हुई है, right? They are expanding trade and political outreach with both China, चाहे उनकी आपस में नहीं बनती है, राइट, रशिया, इन सब के साथ बना के रख रहे हैं, ओके. In July, the air forces of the UAE and China held their second annual joint exercise in the restive. What's a restive region? In the restive Chinese region of Xinjiang. Infer the meaning contextually, even if you don't know the meaning of restive. Restive would mean peaceful. It simply means restless. Restless. Something that is not peaceful, okay? Restive is restless. So, restive Chinese region of Xinjiang, where Beijing has committed itself to systematic and violent repression of its Uyghur Muslim population. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Right. So there is a minority Muslim population in China and they suppress it like anything. And see, if you look at it from a religious perspective, UAE also has a Muslim majority. But in the interest of money, in the interest of economic prosperity, it is conducting joint exercise with it, a joint air force exercise with it in a region where it is suppressing the Muslim population. That's the hidden point that the author is trying to make here. Okay. Satellite images that captured these exercises show that the UAE flew. Now see, अब UAE कितना समझदार है. It flew its predominantly Western military equipment, including French-made Mirage 2000 fighter aircraft and US-made C-17 Globemaster heavy transport aircraft deep into Chinese territories. तो हमने यूरोप से भी बना के रखी हुई है, हमने यूएस से भी बना के रखी हुई है, चाइना से भी बना के और रशिया से भी. So they are putting their eggs in multiple baskets, especially UAE. Right? Make sense? So you have a question on this sentence, so I'll not explain it right away because there's a question later on. In former US President Joe Biden's framing of international relations, so he said that there is an unfolding democracy versus autocracy contestation, right? An unfolding democracy versus autocracy contestation. So in this framing, if we frame the world in this way, Arab monarchies have found a sweet spot to thrive in. Okay. Make sense? So we are talking about UAE and Saudi Arabia as the examples of Arab monarchies. Passages like these, how to identify author's claim while reading. So if you see here, because see, we read the title here, what do you think from the title? Will the new Middle East order survive the old? What is the author's stance there? Is any stance visible from that? Let's see. Can a new Middle East survive the old? Yes, that was the title. Now see, it says to achieve regional progress, Arab leaders need to rethink the importance of resolving the Palestinian question once and for all. So this is the argument of the author. Now here I showed you the argument because I knew that okay, what is going to come can be slightly challenging for you, but in your exam you will not be shown these excerpts. Yeah. So in the exam, how can you determine this? Let's see. So we are saying in the beginning that, earlier this had been pushed to the background. This issue had been pushed to the background, but it is now central. See, this is the author's stance. It is now central to any cohesive forward movement for the Arab world, Israel and Iran alike. Right here is the author's stance. Then let's see if some other words show us that stance. See this. It has been used as a crisis of convenience earlier, for management of regional politics. But this is now bound to change. Again, the author's key opinion and stance that this is now bound to change. They'll have to resolve the Palestinian issue. Okay. TP, does that make sense? So wherever you see there is a claim and whenever the author is making what makes a claim a central claim, it will be repeated in different words. So earlier also this was stated. Yeah. When we had this, where did I show it to you? Yeah. Earlier also this was stated that it is now central. Then again I am saying this, that it has been a crisis of convenience, but this is now bound to change. So this makes it a very key claim and the central claim here. Make sense? Okay. Yes, you are right. Sometimes because not every article will give you very hardcore data. So yes, sometimes it might feel like the fact is a claim. However, again, what will guide you is that whenever there is a claim, there will be strong words. For example, bound to change. When we say something like this, bound to change, then it has become a central issue before any progress is possible. Let's say if I'm saying that. So these are strong words, right? And they are again in the nature of opinion words rather than factual words. So factual words will tell you this is the case, right? This is what is happening. Okay, so for instance, October 7 ko Hamas ne attack kiya, October 8 ko Hezbollah ne kar diya. That's a fact. However, when I say something is bound to change, something is bound to happen, this is not possible before this, these are in the nature of opinion. So look at the way it is phrased. That will help. Okay, good question, this one. Okay, so far I hope everything is clear to you, right? This is our last slide. Let's see what it says. Okay. So, from this, just a question related to anticipation in reading. What do you think if the author were to suggest a solution, towards establishing a sovereign Palestinian state? What would the author favor? Let's say a solution provided by countries across the globe, including the West, or led by the West, which is currently happening as we see, or a more local regional solution. So, if let's say this passage were to discuss the solution next, because I am talking about that, the old rule books, the old rule book has returned. Okay, the old rule book which resulted in disorder has returned. So if we were to suggest a solution, if the author were to suggest a solution, they would definitely suggest a more local regional solution, because they are explicitly saying that this has failed. The Western interference has failed to create outcomes leading to sustainable progress, right? So this is their stance also. Now see, they are against, in a way, against Western interference in providing a solution to the Middle East regional disorder, right? Yes, the author is criticizing it implicitly. Excellent, excellent. So the recurring issue is a prime example of the old rule book's return, right? Again, so the Middle East thought that it could skirt around older issues such as the issue of Palestine in the favor of money, but no, it can't do that. It has to address these older issues. Only then probably a new Middle East could be established. So an interesting article, all in all, and it makes us aware of a lot of issues that are happening in the Middle East. Usually we read a lot about Trump, we know a lot about the issues in the US, in Europe, but we read relatively less about the broader Middle East issues. So that's why I brought this article. Right? Any questions? Anything that is not clear? Otherwise, I'll ask a question. So I told you that there is a question related to this sentence. So you have to give me the essence of the sentence that is mentioned here. Let's see what you say. Okay, Pratik has answered the fastest. He says A. What about others? TP says A. All right. Yes, I want more responses. Come on, come on. No negative marking here. Okay, which options did you narrow down to? If you have narrowed down to two options, which options have you narrowed down to? Sam says A. Okay. So, absolutely correct. A is the answer. Right. Now, let's see. See, I think B and D were pretty easy to eliminate. Excellent. Great, Sam. So, the democracy versus autocracy narrative has led Arab monarchies to align more closely with both democratic and autocratic regimes as they seek to resist Western pressures for political reform. This bit is not something that we can see in this sentence. Yes? This bit is not. So if even if let's say, oh, I see both democratic and autocratic, some students could be tempted towards it, but this is completely external. Okay? Eliminated. Alien, this part. Okay, D. Arab monarchies have become marginalized in global politics. Not at all. We talk about regional powers such as UAE and Saudi Arabia, right? Again, democratic reforms not discussed. So, again, this bit is alien. Okay, between A and C, why not C? The Biden administration's framework has enhanced Arab monarchies' traditional diplomatic leverage. This cause-effect relationship is not given. Joe Biden simply framed international relations in these terms that, today's world is basically it's a democracy versus autocracy issue. Yeah, so some countries are increasingly autocratic and some countries have been traditionally democratic. So it's actually a conflict between these two countries, wherein he was calling the Western powers democratic, of course, right? So it's not like his framework will enhance their traditional diplomatic leverage. That can't happen just because somebody has given a framework, right? So eliminated. Yes, they have very skillfully, see, sweet spot. Okay, they've very skillfully positioned themselves as indispensable, something that you can't do away with, something that's essential, indispensable geopolitical players by engaging both democratic and autocratic powers without, this is essential, without fully committing to either. Right? So, A. Yes, we call it framing. Yeah, framing is different from framework. You are right. Framing is the way you articulate something, right? So he articulated international relations in this way. Framework is different when you give a detailed point by point plan roadmap to do something, right? So A is our answer, and I hope that this passage helped you to gain some more insight into the Middle Eastern world. Now, the Shortest History of Israel and Palestine is a great book if you want to gain an insight into the historical aspect of the issue till what is happening today, right? Another one is the 100 Years of War on Palestine. Now, this one actually talks about something called settler colonialism. It's an important idea. I want you to explore this settler colonialism. So your homework would be to find out more about BRI and what is settler colonialism. We'll discuss it in our next class. Okay. All right. So if you don't have any queries, then this is it from my end. Thank you so much for attending. This could have been a difficult topic if in case you have not been following the conflict. So I encourage you to follow it, and a very happy Holi to all of you. I hope this Holi brings a lot more vibrant colors than you already have and fulfills all your wishes for the year. Yeah. The next class will be on Monday. We'll meet on YT at 6 p.m. Right. Tuesday we'll meet on the Rodha portal at 6 p.m. Right. And in the next class we'll do an RC passage. Welcome. Happy Holi. Bye.